Hello and welcome back to Rediscovering You. This is episode 85. Today, I am thrilled to introduce to you our special guest, Tami Stackelhouse. Tami is an award-winning author. She is the founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, the host of the Fibromyalgia Podcast, and executive producer of the feature documentary Invisible. Tami teaches fibromyalgia patients how to take back control of their lives and their health using her signature fibromyalgia wellness framework so that her patients can break free from the prison that their bodies have become and begin living lives they actually love. And in today's conversation, we are going to be exploring what it looks like to rediscover yourself when chronic illness leaves you feeling stuck, and how tools like Tami's fibromyalgia wellness style help women reconnect with who they truly are. Tami, hi, and welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I was cheering over here as you were talking about what we're going to talk about because it's such an important thing.
It truly is. Okay, so I want to start with the most basic of basics. So, a lot of people, I think, have misconceptions about what fibromyalgia is and what it is not. Can you please clear that up for us right away?
Absolutely. Fibromyalgia, we'll just start with what it is and we'll talk about some of those myths we need to bust. But fibromyalgia is a chronic pain condition. It causes widespread body pain, unrelenting fatigue. We have unrefreshing sleep, so you could sleep for hours and wake up still feeling exhausted. And then, of course, brain fog. It usually also comes with things like headaches, digestive issues, all kinds of other stuff, but those are really the primary symptoms. For a long time, and I'm talking, a couple hundred years, because we can see descriptions of fibromyalgia as far back as the 1800s. They thought that this was more of a psychosomatic illness, a crazy woman's disease. But we've got the actual science now, functional MRIs, other sorts of research that show that there are really, truly things going wrong in our bodies. And so fibromyalgia is real. And I just said this yesterday, with illnesses like fibromyalgia and other chronic conditions, a lot of people think we might be faking being sick, but really we're faking being well. We really are sick, and you just don't always see it because conditions like fibromyalgia can fluctuate a lot. You might have good days, you might have bad days. And the good days are the days we're out doing all the things and look fine, and then the bad days you never see us.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of a couple of people in my personal life who I know suffer from fibromyalgia. And one of the biggest things that is a frustration for them is that the outside world looks at them and sees a perfectly healthy and vibrant looking individual, and they have no idea the amount of pain and suffering that they are going through on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Because fibromyalgia is one of those invisible illnesses, right? Where we do look totally fine. So, and then combine that with the part that I just said, we're out doing things on the days that we actually feel good too, right? It really does make it hard for people who aren't on the inside to really know. And it also makes it, I think, hard for us as patients to share because there is that sort of underlying vibe that we get a lot of times of you're just faking it. So we just sort of keep it to ourselves. So you might never know. Fibromyalgia affects 1 in 16 people, 1 in 14 women, 13 women, something like that. And so you definitely, if you're listening to this, you know somebody with fibromyalgia for sure.
Whether you know it or not. No, that's really helpful to just ground us knowing how common it really is. And just in our own circles, we may know or may not know that the people that we have in our lives are dealing with this. I was hoping that you would share a little bit about your own personal journey, because I heard you say we a couple of times. So that I'm assuming that means that you are in the category of somebody with fibromyalgia. Would you mind sharing about your own journey and what led you to do the work that you're doing right now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'd love to share. So I was diagnosed when was that? 2007. I had been married only about 6 months, and that was a whole thing, which would be a different episode. But, it was for me, getting the diagnosis was like the culmination of all the research I'd been doing, all the things I'd been thinking and experiencing over my life, right? Like I always knew there was something off. Right? I always knew there was something wrong, but x-rays look normal, lab tests look normal. Like it's really hard to get that diagnosis. When I finally did get my fibro diagnosis, like I said, that was in 2007. I cried all the way home because I finally found somebody that could say what was wrong and knew what to do with me, which was the other part of it, right? So for the next 2 years until 2009, kind of like we were treating my fibromyalgia, but it wasn't really getting better. It wasn't getting worse. It was like treading water, right? I wasn't drowning anymore, but I also wasn't really living my life. There were points where I could only leave the house once a week. Then I would end up on the couch doing nothing. So it was very limiting. Fortunately, I was in a position, my husband and I were in a position where I could just stay home and work on getting well. And I just sort of made that my full-time job. So then 2009, I had this sort of moment of clarity, like we sometimes do, where I was like, hey, this is not the direction I want my life to go. I was in my mid 30s, like this is too young to have no life. So I spent some more time talking with my doctor about that. And she actually recommended that I work with a health coach in her office. And when I hired my coach, that was the first time that I was able to start doing a lot of the things that my doctor had been saying to do all along, right? Things like working on my sleep schedule, working on changing my diet, working on getting better at pacing, all of these things. And I think this is true for really any kind of health coach. Like there's so many things we know we should be doing, and it's just hard to do, right? So having that person to strategize with and say, okay, yeah, we made these goals. I totally didn't meet any of them. Let's look at why. And how are other ways I can do this? What are things that I can do so I don't end up in a flare? And after 6 months of working with her, my life was totally different. I felt totally different. And that really was the thing that made me want to become a coach and sort of pay it forward. At the end of those 6 months, I really felt like I'd been given my life back. And that felt like such a precious gift that I didn't want to just keep it to myself, right? I knew there were so many more people with fibromyalgia out there like me who were feeling like their lives had been taken away. And I wanted to help them get that back. So I became a coach in 2009, and here we are 17 years later.
So you must like doing what you're doing and find it rewarding.
I love doing what I'm doing. The first time I ever, so I first started off like most people do, just as a general health and wellness coach. But the first time I talked to somebody who had fibromyalgia, it felt like the heavens opened and the angels were singing, and like this was a holy moment. This is what you're supposed to be doing, right? The beam of light coming down from heaven. It was like this is it. This is what it's all about. And I've never looked back.
So interesting. And I love that this shift happened at this point in your life, because a lot of the people that I talk to are of the mindset that I'm in my 30s. I can't possibly like switch gears or start something. Like it's too late for me.
Oh God, that was the beginning.
And that's what I want people to hear is like this could be the beginning. Any day could be the beginning. And look at what you have created and all of the people that you've helped. Can you talk a bit about what you do and how you help people?
Yes, absolutely. So there's obviously a lot of different things that I do, but really what it comes down to in a nutshell is our medical community is not trained in fibromyalgia. They don't have the expertise. In fact, there has been some studies showing that here in the US, our doctors only get about 9 hours of pain management training. That's not fibromyalgia. That's not even chronic pain. That is all pain, right? 9 hours one day. So that is just not enough. And so our doctors, they're doing the best they can, but they just don't have the knowledge. They also are focused on how do we manage this illness? They're not focused on restoring people's lives. And so that's where I get to step in, right? That's where I can fill that gap of knowledge, right? Be able to fill in those things both for the patient and for the provider. Here's the research, here's things to try, here's, stuff that we can do. Plus then, of course, the personal aspect of being somebody who has lived with fibromyalgia for so long, like I can give you real tips and tricks from my own life. And then my focus is on helping you get back to living the life you want to live. It's really about rediscovering your new self, but also restoring your life so that you can, whether we change the pain levels or not is kind of irrelevant. What's really important is you being able to live your life. Usually that means we have to do something about the pain, of course, but it's really, the focus is really on restoring people's lives.
And that is so important. And I think it's an overlooked fact of fibromyalgia is that when people are in constant pain or receive this diagnosis, it's not a small thing. Like who you see yourself as an individual and what your hopes and dreams and like even your activities of daily living, it's changed. Can you share a bit about from your perspective what you've seen like when somebody is either not diagnosed or newly diagnosed with fibromyalgia, what they're struggling with, not just with the pain, but with their personal identity?
Yeah, that identity part is such a big piece, and we don't talk about it enough because, like I said, it's not so much about the pain. I mean, it is, but it's really about how that pain gets in the way of us living the lives that we want to live and being who we want to be, right? So you might look at it in a similar way as the empty nest syndrome. If your whole identity is wrapped up in what you do and who you care for, and now all of a sudden you can't do that anymore, who am I?
Right.
Right. So in my case, I managed the support department for a software company. I managed the call center, email support. I did our customer events when we would do live events. I organized those and ran them many times. And then there was just no way I could do that. That's why I said, I kind of made getting well my full-time job because there was still this piece of me that's like, what do I do now? Right? Because my identity, who I am, is so tied up in what I do that I had to find another do. Right? And so for a lot of people, we end up having to give up maybe hobbies that we enjoy or careers or not being able to go do the fun things with friends or family. A lot of us identify as being sort of the caregiver, the person that cares for everyone else. We can't do that anymore. Now we have to receive that. And that can be a big challenge. So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. And a lot of how you talk about this is not so much pushing past the pain, but partnering with your own body in your healing process. I was hoping you could speak to that angle of it as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you and be on your show, because it really is about rediscovering who you are. Like at your core, at your most essential self, right? Who am I? And then knowing that and knowing the body that I have right now today, not the body I wish I had, or some idealized version if I could stack only good days together, or who I used to be. But right now, today, with how, the energy levels I have today, the pain levels I have today, the level of brain fog I have today, who is that person and what can she do? When we try to push past the pain, when we try to push through the fatigue, we end up just making it worse and making it all take longer. And I often use the analogy of, if you broke your foot, or if you broke your leg, right, you would have to get off of that. You'd have to not just walk around on it, because if you did that, you could actually create more damage, right? And I think fibromyalgia is a very similar kind of thing. We've got to sort of get off of ourselves, right, and give our bodies that space to rest and to heal and to, rebuild ourselves and our health it just is going to take a whole lot longer than it does for a broken bone. And that's where we get impatient. And I also want to just kind of stop here and just recognize sometimes we just got to do what we got to do, right? It might be one of those seasons in life. I see it a lot with my clients who have small children, right? Like, you just got to do what you got to do. But we can be looking for ways to work with your bodies, how you feel, your routines, right? Some of us are great in the morning. Some of us are more night owls, right? So working with your natural rhythms of energy when your brain feels most clear, right? And stop trying to do that mismatch, right? Trying to do that hard brain work when you've got a lot of brain fog. For instance, do that hard brain work when you've got a good brain. Like when your brain feels the clearest, it'll actually be easier, take less effort, less time, and just really make the whole thing work better. And I am all about efficiency as well. I think that's a lot of what I do with my clients is how do we do this more efficiently? How do we make this take as little energy as possible, be as easy as possible, and then save that extra time and energy to give your body the space to heal?
Love all of this. And I also love just the idea of tuning into your body and listening to the signs and signals that it's always giving us. And I think fibromyalgia patients are really forced so much more so to need to tune into the signals that their body is giving them. And it forces you almost in a way to get out of your head and thinking about like, I want to be doing X, Y, or and Z or in this sort of a way. But no, your body's saying it needs rest or it needs hydration or whatever it is. To really pay attention and not look at your body as an enemy, but as a teacher. That can be a frustrating teacher sometimes, but a teacher nonetheless. And that's so important because, again, a lot of the conversations I love having are being able to listen to the wisdom of your body and act accordingly. And it sounds like the work that you do in coaching helps the people that you work with recognize their own areas of like when are they at their optimal areas of performance to do the harder mental load tasks or to do the more physical things when they're feeling physically able to. Because I think a lot of that just is in the background and not at the forefront of what people are thinking and how they're planning their days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is maybe one of the gifts that fibromyalgia has given me. I have accomplished a lot in my life since my diagnosis. And I think it's actually because of fibromyalgia, because one of the things that I learned early on is my decisions really matter, right? I only have so much energy. I only have so much time, which is true for every single person on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a finite limit to how much energy and time we have. My limit happens to be lower. And so it really showed me that the decisions that I make, how I spend that energy and that time is so important. Am I spending that on the things that really matter most to me? Am I spending that on the things that are going to move me closer to my goals? Or am I spending it on stuff that doesn't really matter? And then I get to the end of the day and feel totally frustrated because I've got nothing left.
Right.
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 So I do a lot of work with my students and my clients on really figuring out what is the most important thing. Right?
Yes.
And then how do we better budget that energy and that time so that we're spending it on what's most important?
Yeah, that's so important. That is so important. That's a really good way to put it is that we have a finite amount of resources and time and what is really important to you. I imagine that this helps people really get into sharper focus, what's truly their North Star, what's worth their time and their effort. And so that is a gift. And I think the more that you're able to with fibromyalgia or with any other obstacles that you have in life, if you look at how it is a teacher for you and how it helps you, I think it just must be so helpful in helping the people that you work with have more grace in their lived experience of this and have more happiness and joy too. And focusing on the things that it brings to them and not just things that it's taking from them. It's a really good reframe.
Yeah. The adding joy back into our lives is one of the first things that I do with all of my people because fibromyalgia can feel like a very slow, eternal taking away of things, right? Like it's just this slow attrition of all the things that matter. And our lives can get really, really small,
Mhm.
right? And so really focusing on, experiencing that joy, adding that joy back in, even if it's as simple as spending a minute cuddling the cat. We talked about Finn. He might make an
Yes.
appearance, he might not. But, I've always felt like like my cats are little angels that are telling me it's time to take a break. So when they come and they say hello, that's like, the little tap on the shoulder, hey, you should take a minute. And so I always, not always, but try to anyway. But it can be that simple. It can be as simple as, noticing, oh, the sky is really pretty today. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, those things that bring you joy. I mean, the spa brings me joy too. But the majority of my joy list is really pretty simple things.
And I think that's true for so many people. And it is the simple things, the snuggle with your cat, the warm cup of tea, like the staying in bed an extra 5 minutes. Like it's those things that
Mhm.
really can add so much happiness and joy to your life. So that's wonderful. I know that your approach to working with your patients is definitely not a one size fits all. And I love that because all of us are such unique individuals. Can you share a little bit about how you tailor your approach to your different patients and a bit about your fibromyalgia wellness style?
Yes. So, yeah, I really think it's important that we do provide personalized approaches. I always cringe when I see, fibromyalgia things, step 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're not all like, yes, it is the same illness. Yes, we all kind of experience the same things, but what's important to you might not be the same thing that's important to me. Like you might really be struggling with your pain levels being out of control, and my pain might not be so bad, but I have a lot of fatigue. And so I really feel like, even if at the end of the day, even if I have helped everybody with all the same things, they're not necessarily in the same order. And I think, especially, I mean, I know you'll relate to this as a coach, but it also has to be like the client has to decide what it is that we're working on, because it has to be something that's motivating to them, something that they even want to work on. I had one person, this is my favorite question I've ever gotten. One of my people asked me, so if I work with you, do I have to give up coffee and chocolate? I just love that question because there's so much more to it than just the question itself. It's this idea of, do I have to give up the last couple of things that bring me joy? Is kind of what she's asking me. And the answer is really the answer to the question that you asked, which is only if you want to, right? If that's something you want to work on, absolutely we can. But if that's like the last thing that's bringing you joy in life, we can find other things to work on. At the same time, when we help people with fibromyalgia, it's not necessarily just what medications, what supplements, what therapies, like working on the illness. Like I said, we're all about restoring lives. And so I've helped one of my clients, she really needed tires for her car. Having unsafe tires was really stressing her out, but her brain fog was so high that making the decision of where to go, what to buy, that was stressing her out. All of it was making her symptoms so much worse. So that was the first thing we worked on, was figuring out how to get tires for her car. Because all of life, like it's all related, it's all interconnected. And so we really do need to figure out what's important to you and start there. Or maybe it's what feels easiest to you. Maybe it all feels super hard, but I feel like maybe I can do this one thing. Yeah. We start there, and just sort of chip away at it. Yes, we're going to have to work on sleep with everybody. We're going to have to work on hormones. We're going to have to work on nutrition. We're going to have to work on pacing. Like we're going to have to work on all of these things, but different things are more important to different people. That's really the big thing about taking that personalized approach. The other thing, like you mentioned, is that fibromyalgia wellness style quiz, right? We all have different personalities too. And that's really what that quiz is. It's a personality test. It's based off of the Big Five, the personality 5-factor. So there are certain parts of the big five that directly relate to health outcomes. And so I created this quiz based off of those factors that really can help people determine, are you a playmaker? Are you a perfectionist? Are you the ponderer? Are you the prevailer? And we all, again, are going to have very similar symptoms. Maybe we're not getting good sleep at night. As a playmaker, I'm not getting good sleep because I'm not even in bed yet because I'm still reading the book. I'm still watching the TV show. I'm still playing the game. I'm playing, right? My perfectionists, they're going to be laying in bed going through that to-do list. What did I get done? What did I not get done? What's coming up tomorrow, right? They're checking all the boxes. So knowing what your wellness style is and how your personality intersects with your symptoms gives us a much better way of creating strategies that are actually going to work for you. Right? My prevailers, they are really easy at adding things in. They follow what their doctor tells them to do, but they're not so good at knowing, okay, I'm done with that. Right? They just kind of keep going. That's what they do. They prevail, right? So everybody can benefit from different kinds of help and has different superpowers and different challenges when it comes to managing their symptoms.
Can you give just one or two examples of how you might tailor your approach differently based on how the results come up with the quiz that they take?
Yes. So like I said, I'm a playmaker. And for me, it is really easy for me to do the things that I find enjoyable or interesting. So if I think this will be fun, not a problem, right? Or if I think it's interesting, not a problem. But the boring stuff, like the day-to-day, like brushing your teeth, right? Those things are really hard for me. So for someone like me as a playmaker, what I really need as a coach is I need that accountability partner. I need that person to say, hey, did you do the thing? Because on my own, I'm less likely to do it, right? Or somebody to strategize with for how do we gamify this, right? How do I know I need to exercise. Maybe we pair that with a show you really enjoy, right? How do we make it fun? How do we make it interesting? So that's the kind of thing that I need. The ponderer, my husband actually happens to be a ponderer. He doesn't have fibromyalgia, but that's where his personality fits in. And our ponderers are really good at, they thinking things through, right? They ponder, right? But sometimes that can get them spinning in all the thoughts without actually taking action. They tend to worry a lot. They definitely see the downsides of things. They don't necessarily always see the positive sides. So when I'm working with a ponderer, I don't really have to say, hey, you need to watch out for that, because they're already doing that times 10. What they need, they also need that accountability, right? But they need someone to remind them to have fun, to, enjoy things, that accountability, that conscientiousness, but also not pushing them too hard, right? They tend to delay in making the doctor's appointment because they're afraid of what they might find out, right? So helping them manage those expectations of, it'll be worse if we don't do anything. Like, here's how do we take those next steps, like breaking it down really small, those kinds of things. My perfectionists, they're going to do all the things at like 150%. And so with perfectionists, I am actually pulling them back more than I'm pushing them forward because they're already doing enough. And so it's more a matter of, okay, we know you're going to do it 150. We can't do everything that way, but what are like the most important things? And then how do we let the rest go?
That all makes so much sense. Yes. Yeah. And I could definitely see how starting with that, with knowing where you lie on that big five is going to be so helpful for you and your coaches to know which direction to go and how to be most supportive with them on their journey. And I love that it really is so individualized. Like you will talk to somebody, like whether coffee and chocolate is a motivator or changing your tires, like it doesn't matter what the thing is, just like being able to talk to all parts of the person. It's such a holistic way to heal. And I think traditional medicine, we just look at this is your symptom of pain. How are we going to get rid of that pain? And so
Yeah.
great if you can do that, but is that going to produce a long-term result and lasting change in your life? Maybe, but probably not, I would guess. So I think that's really remarkable. And yeah, no, and very needed, very needed in this community, in the medical community at large, but particularly for fibromyalgia patients. Wow. Okay. So speaking of just helping all of these people that you've worked with, can you talk a bit about what some of the changes you've seen in your patients, any of the improvements, anything that shifted, not just with pain, but with how they see themselves in their own identity?
Yes, yes. So the first person I always think of when I'm asked this question is actually someone who took my very first class that I taught. She's a coach now, but she was part of that very first class 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she had still has a very active family. She used to be very active with them. But with her fibromyalgia, she ended up being, as she calls it, the person holding the coats, right? Everybody else is out there doing the thing, playing the game, doing the
Yeah.
walk, the run, and she's the person holding the coats.
Yeah.
And she wanted to be the person who doesn't hold the coats anymore. And
That's
so I have loved over the last 10 years watching her change and grow. And now she's doing the walks with them. I mean, she also has professional athletes in her family, and she is not a
mhm.
professional athlete. So, she's not doing all the things, but, she's no longer the person holding the coats. And that's a huge identity shift, right?
It is
Going
huge.
from the person who was able to participate to now I'm just the person holding the coats to now being the person who participates again. So I always think of her. Another one that I've seen a similar thing, one of my gals who's actually graduating on January 24th as a new coach, she owned a gym. She was very, very active, did a lot of hiking and things like that with her husband. And with her fibromyalgia, just had to let a lot of that go, change the work that she was doing and all these things. But her husband had always wanted to go on this very one specific hike that was going to be very difficult, a week-long hike, and she just hadn't felt like she could do it. But last year before, somewhere in the last couple of years, she was able to actually do that hike with him, and it was a hike to Everest Base Camp.
So cool. Wow.
Now, if you're listening to this and you have fibromyalgia, I don't help everybody go hike to Everest Base Camp. I'm not going to be doing that. But it was something that was super important to her, and I think it's such a big example of where life can go. But to give you an example on the other end, I also have a graduate who in that same graduating class, she's graduating as an advisor. And she's the only person I have seen take my class yet who actually ended up worse at the end of the class. And it was because she started realizing how many other things were actually going wrong, that it wasn't all fibromyalgia, that she actually is going to be having hip surgery to fix one of these problems. And one of the things that she said to me recently was that she realized she couldn't meditate her way out of what was wrong with her hip. It was going to take surgery. So I'm excited to see where she ends up after she heals up from the surgery. I'm sure she'll be so much better. But sometimes that path to healing isn't just a straight line, and sometimes there are those what seem like setbacks that are really just new opportunities to heal. So there are, sometimes it's little things, sometimes it's big things like Everest, but most people it's really more like Brenda's story of not being the person who holds the coats anymore. What
I
is it that you
love
want out of
that.
your life?
I want to be the
Yeah.
person that holds the coats. I love that. That's such like a vivid picture that I think a lot of people listening can relate to. I know myself, like without fibromyalgia, I have been the person that holds the coat sometime, and I'm just like, what am I doing on the sidelines here? And yeah, I
Yeah.
just imagine not just the physical improvements, but the immense mental health improvements that would be coupled with regaining your life back and doing the things that bring you joy.
Yes, yes. The other thing here too is that all of my coaches have fibromyalgia. I have fibromyalgia. So a lot of times when we're talking to people, we're the first person they're talking to who actually understands, who have walked that path, who have been in their shoes. When you tell me it's a bad day, I get it. I know what that means. You don't have to explain. If we're talking about your goals and you're like, yeah, last week was a bad week. I didn't get anything done. Enough said. Been there, right?
Yeah.
There is that healing aspect as well of finally being seen and understood and just by somebody who understands.
Much power in that because you feel so alone, and it's like because people can't relate to you if they don't see it, they don't understand what you're going through. And
Yeah.
doctors, a lot of the times, as you said at the start, don't have the training to really speak to this as best as they probably could if they had different types of training to it.
Yeah.
So you've talked a lot about you and your coaches. So you have some coaches that you work with. Can you talk about your system, your program, the people that work with you, your graduates, all of that?
Oh, yes. So I had been a coach for, let's see, what was it? Maybe 6 years, I think, when I wrote my first book. And when my first book came out, I realized like that was really the trigger where I was like, there's a lot more people out there than I can really help myself. Like, yeah, there's millions. You can't help millions.
Right.
So that's when I was like, okay, how can I duplicate myself? Because like this is a modality that I created. And so just me can't do it all. And so that's when I started my institute, the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. We have 2 programs. The first one is the Certified Fibromyalgia Advisor, and that's where I teach you everything I can about fibromyalgia in 3 months. Actually, it's so cool we're talking today because I just got the notification a couple days ago that our programs are now approved for CE credits through the ANCC, which is the American Nurses Credentialing Center. So people like nurses, PAs, PTs, licensed social workers, those people who have to earn CE credits, ANCC credits, our training programs will actually meet that requirement now. So
That's incredible. Like, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. You're actually, this is the first time I've talked about it publicly. I know we're recording, but yes, because it's that new. So it's very cool. So the advisor class will earn about 34 credits. And like I said, I teach you everything I can about fibromyalgia in 3 months. We talk about sleep, pain, energy, brain fog, alternative therapies, nutrition, medications, all the things, right? At the end of that, I have a lot of people who want to become coaches take that program, and then other providers, right? Massage therapists who want to better understand fibromyalgia will take the advisor class. We do track before and after for like patients coming in, what their the fibromyalgia impact questionnaire score is. It's kind of a measure of their symptoms. We take that at the end. And in that 3-month class, we are averaging right about a 50% improvement. Wow. So cutting symptoms in half in 3 months, that's life-changing.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yes. I have one graduate who actually ended up worse at the end by a couple of points, but still, to be transparent. So that's the first step. People who want to go on and do the work that I do, coaching. So again, the first part is just all the fibro knowledge. The second part is now how do you help somebody else with that knowledge? So that's where we teach them, how to coach, how to do a coaching call, how do we do a consultation, best practices, scope of practice, like all the nuts and bolts of that. And the coach class, like the big part of that is you actually going out there and doing the work. So doing the coaching with real fibro patients, they have to do 100 coaching sessions to graduate. And by the end of that, you're a lot more confident, your skills are a lot better. And then those people go out then and like, that's how I've duplicated myself. They're now doing the work that I was doing just by myself. So we do have a Find a Coach page on our website. If you want to, find a coach, you can do that. It's findafibrocoach.com. But if you're interested in maybe doing that kind of work, this has been one of the big ways that a lot of people have sort of reinvented themselves, right?
Yes.
One of my coaches, she was a psychotherapist for over 25 years. And just with her fibromyalgia, she needed a different way. She needed something else. And so now she's coaching, which is very similar work, uses all her same skills, but it's also different work. And one of the big things that I like to teach people in my coach class is how to have that sustainable business where you're taking care of yourself while you're helping others. And I will say, just for myself, my fibromyalgia is in remission now. And that happened while I was building my business. So that idea that a lot of people have of what it means to build a business, spending, 60, 80 hours a week, I could never do that. And so I had to create a business that actually helped me get better, not worse. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do with my people.
But what I also love is just that you have given an opportunity for people suffering from fibromyalgia to reinvent their lives in a way that is probably profoundly meaningful to them as well if they choose to be a coach and work under your supervision. That's incredible to know that you are able to, through your own suffering and pain, help others and guide them through their journey provides so much meaning and helps to make sense out of something that you're like, why is this happening to me? There's no sense making of it. No, like you can help people. Like you now have the
Yes.
knowledge and the skills. Like that's such a gift that you do for the coaches that you train. And obviously it trickles even further out to their patients and clients. And what an impact.
Yes, yes. My favorite stories are when I hear about people that my coaches have helped. So here's my favorite one. So I had a gal who took my training program. She became a coach. As part of her coach training, she coached someone, I can't even remember what country they were in now, but a completely different European country. And the client happened to speak both English and whatever her native language was. That client went to physical therapy, was teaching her physical therapist the stuff she was learning from my coach. And then that physical therapist helped another one of their patients with the stuff that they learned. So I wasn't counting, but how many degrees of separation that is, right? That end person is in a country I don't live in, speaks a language I don't speak. Like that is somebody I never could have helped. But because of all the work that all of us have done, right? It wasn't just my work. It was the coach's work, the client's work, the PT's work, right? Like now somebody else is getting the help that they need that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And that's what it's all about for me.
It's bring you such incredible joy to know that you have made a positive impact like that to somebody in a different corner of the world that you never would have had access to were it not for the work that you've done.
And also for the illness that I ended up with that wasn't so fun, right? Like it was literally my biggest pain has brought me the best joy.
Right. I love that. That's beautiful. So anybody listening, wanting to learn more, wanting to work with you, wanting to get in touch with you, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you? All of the things.
Yes. So probably the easiest and one place to go would be my podcast, the Fibromyalgia Podcast. You can find that in any podcast app. You can also go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com. And when you go there, just look for resources in the menu. There's a lot of free resources there. That fibromyalgia wellness style quiz we talked about. If you want information on finding a coach or being a coach, you can get all of that from that spot.
Thank you so much. As we close out, I want to just give you an opportunity to speak directly to somebody who might be listening right now and just feeling incredibly discouraged and incredibly stuck, who is likely dealing with chronic pain, be it fibromyalgia or some other form of chronic pain.
Yes. So first of all, I see you. I've been you. It can feel like these conditions, these illnesses, these life circumstances have stolen our lives and made us prisoner in our own bodies, right? But it doesn't have to stay that way. Your doctor may not know the answer, but there are people out there who do know the answer. And so if it's fibromyalgia, obviously I can help with that. If it's Ehlers-Danlos, if it's, whatever it is, there are people out there who know. So don't give up trying to find answers. And like I said, if it's fibromyalgia is actually very treatable when you finally get the right person who actually knows how to help you. It is very treatable. And I firmly believe that all of us can feel better than we do today. Even me, even Laura, we all can feel better than we do today. And so just don't give up on that, and don't give up looking for the right help.
What a beautiful and inspirational message to close with. Tami Stackelhouse, thank you again so much for being here on the podcast. It's been such a joy speaking with you today.
Thank you so much. I've loved it too.